The next scenario I'd like to take a look at is another event-based report, but this time we want to make a report where the entire report itself represents a discrete event in the process. So let's say, for example, a clean-in-place cycle where a clean-in-place machine is connected to some pipework or some sort of liquid storing vessel, and then a cycle is run by the machine to clean the vessel. And the duration of the cycle is not necessarily based on time, but the measurement of KPIs, and the cycle only ends when the KPIs hit a certain value that let the machine and the process know that its job is complete. So for a report like that, we can actually go into the template library. There's a pretty good example of that built in that we can just use. So I'll go back in the library and I'll select Industry, Food and Beverage, Clean in Place Cycle. And this report's going to work by monitoring a start cycle event, collecting data continuously throughout the event, and then collecting some summary data as well when the event is finished. So we'll call this one CIP. We'll use the real-time data connector. And in this case, we'll say this is the fermenter vessel that this report is going to be cleaning, but we wouldn't really necessarily even have to have a particular vessel associated with the template. And now I'll also put in some KPIs I want to measure. And you'll have to play along here because I don't really have some good clean-in-place data. So let's just throw the mixer tags in there. And I believe we get 7 KPIs. So let's do 2 from the extruder. But the important one that actually showcases a good feature of the template is actually the stage indicator. And for that one, I'm going to use a custom tag here that I can write a value into. So now I'm going to finish that. It's going to launch the schedule. And the schedule for this one's actually defined by 4 different events that take place, or 4 different actions in XLReporter that take place. The first action occurs at the start of the CIP cycle. So we'll define that based on the cycle start tag being equal to 1. And it's going to capture the ID of the CIP cycle and store it in an XLReporter variable. So for that, I can use another connector item. This one is going to be the cycle ID tag. And I'll take out that cycle start tag as well because we'll use that for the other actions. Now the second action that occurs after we captured the cycle ID from the tag value is we're going to update some header information at the start of the cycle. So that will also be triggered on cycle start equals 1. Now the last 2 events occur both throughout the cycle and at the end. So this one occurs every, I guess we'll say, for the sake of demonstration, every 1 second. But in real terms, you may really not need to go that fast. But this one will be based on cycle start equal to 1 and occur every 1 second while that event is true, or while that condition is true. And it's going to update some continuous data that's going to go into the body of the report. The last event is going to be when the cycle ends. So cycle start is equal to 0. It's toggled off, and it updates some end of cycle and footer information. So we'll save that. And this one I'm actually going to drive live. So let's start the scheduler. And now it's going to begin monitoring for those events live in real time. So there we go. And then I'm going to go into the system check tool here, which is going to allow us to write values to those trigger tags. If you were using an Allen Bradley PLC, you could be doing this from Studio 5000, for example. I'll come in, I'll select the PLC simulator connector. I'll go in and I'll select some of those tags that I have associated with the report. So let's go in to do cycle start. We'll do cycle ID, and then we'll do user number 1, which is my stage indicator or phase indicator. So let's read the values on there, and we'll see what they have in them. This one has an 8. Before I start, I'm going to want to put that to a 1, let's say. And then I'm going to, let's say, start the cycle. So let's write a value of 1 onto that cycle start tag. You'll see that these first 3 lines light up. These 2 just once at the start, this one every 1 second as long as it's true. Now we can go in and we can begin putting different values into this user number tag. And that'll be important to the end result of the report, which I'll show you in a moment. Now let's say we're in phase number 3. And we'll just slowly cycle through all these phases. And what's going to happen is these numbers are going to be recorded, and then based on a lookup table, they'll be decoded into text strings, and the text strings will be added as labels onto a trend chart, so we can actually see visual kind of bookmarks on the trend chart of the KPIs where each phase was starting and stopping. So I'll just go through the remaining phases that I have here, and we'll just let each one take a couple samples. I've got 6, and then we'll do 7 and 8 here. So we'll give it a few seconds. And then finally, we'll let the last phase of the CIP cycle run. And then once that's run, we'll turn the cycle off. You'll see these. This third one will stop updating, and the fourth one will update. Now, if I actually go back into my report viewer, we'll see under CIP 2020 AUG, there's a report with the value of that cycle ID tag on it and the current day. And then in here, we have some kind of nonsensical waveform simulator data. But you can see that the phases are actually decoded here. They were collected originally as their numeric values, then they were decoded, and then they were added onto the chart here. And we have a little bit of overlap, but that's only because we ran them so quickly together. You can see at the top of the report, you have the start time, the end time, the duration, the cycle ID, the date, and then all of the samples are included below. And all that was done just by a built-in template, which I think is pretty good. If we want to go and take a look at that template to see how it works, we can open this up. And you can see if we zoom in, and we saw this on the report as well, but you can see there's a table here that includes step numbers and names, and this is actually what's used to decode that. So if we go into the connections, there is the data connection here that's going at the top for the cycle name, the date and time when the report is updated. There's the data that's inserted continuously down in this body area. And then on the Manage tab over here, there's a lookup range connection, which basically points at that cell J49, which is where the process stage is being collected as a numeric value. And it goes and decodes that based on a lookup table in B14, which has this data here. So you could actually change this to reflect any number of steps and step names you wanted to. And then there's an outline range, which goes into that J49 column, removes all the duplicates from the column after it's been decoded, so you end up with just one row where each stage started, a bunch of blanks, another row, the start of the next stage. And then there's this chart enhancement function, which actually goes and creates a bunch of text labels on the chart and basically creates a chart, a trend chart, out of those text labels. And it all works just out of the box. You know, this stuff might seem kind of complicated if you're just looking at it as a novice user, but as a user of this template, all you would need to know is you just have to put your steps and your names in this area here, and they'll automatically be decoded and added onto the trend chart. And these are just a few examples of what can be done with XLReporter's management connections. If you're ever interested in getting some advanced functionality in your templates, you can check out the data management chapter in the user guide. It's got all of the configuration settings and examples for all of the different types of management functions that you might configure in a report template. And so that's essentially the basic framework of generating a report based on a discrete event. You might have schedule actions that happen at the start of that event, at the end, continuously throughout the event, during different phases that could be happening in sequence or in parallel with each other. And then you have the option to add some advanced functions into the template itself that can massage the data and reformat it based on the reporting requirements.